So first and foremost, I test drove a lot of cars. So let's go through the journey. The first car we test drove was a Peugeot 308, and it was just not the right choice because it was a bit small to really be a good family car for full adults. Couldn't really carry that many things or that many people. Its interior, while quirky and I liked it for that, wasn't very smart or sensible. And overall, its drive wasn't very enjoyable. The brakes didn't really bite until you pressed all the way and then they will brake too hard. The engine, for example, was this turbocharged engine with a lot of turbo lag, which I didn't like. Like, it had no power at all until 2,500 RPM, and then it had a lot of power. So you lurched forward and probably would hit someone if you're in heavy traffic. It just wasn't a really good choice. So Peugeot 308 was off the list. The next car we tried was a Renault Clio. It was even smaller, even less practical, so don't need to say, it was just not the right choice. It had good depreciation and good like numbers and stuff, and it did had a reverse camera, but everything about it screamed, you know, not that good, not that desirable. And considering it was an old Renault, probably had reliability issues coming our way. So then I was like, okay, let's go with Skoda and check out a Skoda. So we tested this Skoda Octavia, and honestly, it was like the perfect car, and it still probably is a more rational choice than the car that we ended up with, but it had zero emotion to it. It was the most bland car ever. 1.4 litre TSI engine was okay, it was peppy. It had a bit of turbo kick to it once you hit 3000 RPM as you do with TSI engines. 7-speed dual clutch, reverse camera. It was quite spacious for the car of that size, and it was super duper practical, and it was like, it just made sense. Like, if I was boring, I will get that Skoda Octavia. I really like that car. I mean, it was not a fancy interior, it was quite Spartan, but it was practical, and everything about it was just rational, and just made sense. And it was also really easy to drive, which was important for a first-time car. But it just wasn't that inspiring. So I said, okay, this is the backup option. If everything else fails, we'll choose the practical one and just choose the practical decision. And then we moved on. The budget got increased because my dad decided to be a bit more generous with the family car. So he then went ahead and was like, okay, here's the budget. So we started looking at 3 Series and C-Class because, you know, I like that badge. But basically, you get the idea. So we test drive a 3 Series, and honestly, it's the most fun car we test drive out of all of the cars. It's got a lot of pep to it. The heavy, sharp steering is impressive. The low down seating position is impressive. The car is designed for the driver, and it eggs you on, it edges you on. It makes sense as to why BMW drivers don't signal. When I drove the BMW 3 Series, I realized why. It's because BMWs have a lot of kind of driver motivation and a lot of kind of like arrogant driver vibe. It tells the driver, you can cut into that gap without signaling and you will make it. You can cut into that corner. You can go at that speed at that corner. You can do it. You will do it. You're a BMW driver. You're in a BMW. Ultimate driving machine. You will make that turn. You will make that, you know, small gap in traffic even though you don't signal. And that's probably why BMW drivers don't signal. It just gives you that arrogant feel when you're driving it because it really eggs you on. And I can see why it's so fun of a car to drive, but knowing reliability issues, servicing problems, and knowing that I'm a broke kid that can't afford to have all these issues and these time delays, I was like, no, it's not a wise choice for a first car, even though it'd be really, really cool. We moved on from the 3 Series. Even a 318 was that fun. Like, imagine what an M3 would feel like. So we moved on, and then we test drove some C-Classes. So we test drove a C180 Avantgarde and a C180, I think, Executive. One's a bit more of a comfortable thing. The latter is more comfortable of a layout, and then the former is more of an aggressive design style. Not much differences in terms of specs. Both were very well-maintained, good cars. And it was very easy and comfortable to drive because my dad had an E-Class and it was like from the same generation. So the controls, the feel of the car, everything was exactly as you expect it to be. And it was just a very nice, comfortable place to be. The interior is awesome. You know, if you were a passenger or a driver, you will have a relaxing ride, relaxing drive the whole way through, which is nice. It is nice, but it wasn't really inspiring of a car. And while I absolutely loved it for the badge, it wasn't really that great of a car. Like, it was a comfortable drive. It was a relaxing drive. It's like driving a Lexus ES. As a young kid, you want a bit more of excitement in your car. So, quick recap right now. What we have is a very practical backup option in the Skoda Octavia. The C-Class, which had unreasonably high amounts of depreciation. Actually, that's the main reason why we didn't end up with the C-Class. The depreciation is like a joke. It was like 100k for 4 years left. So like depreciation was like 20k. 3 Series also was out because of servicing issues and also joke depreciation. And then we also had like the other French hatchbacks, which were out of the question because they really weren't that good of a choice, that good of cars. So then we were left with, well, very undesirable choices. So at this point, I was honestly quite defeated. I was like, okay, so you know what, screw it. Screw having a fun, interesting car. Let's just go for the most practical option. Let's go and look at some Estates and some big Skodas. So CLA 200 was one of these cars that I test drove in. I wouldn't mind a CLA because the CLA Estate looks gorgeous. It was like the old CLA, the first gen CLA. I really love the look of the car. I love the look of the shooting brake. It's gorgeous. But we tried a CLA 200 and oh my God, it was an old one. It was crappy. It was like knocking sounds in the suspension, crappy. Brakes not really working properly, crappy. No engine power left, crappy. Like, we had to press the accelerator all the way just to go up a multi-story car park. Like, it wasn't going to be a good choice, so that was out of the question. As much as I love the look of a shooting brake CLA, it is what it is. So I was like, okay, you know what? Give up on Mercedes, give up on fancy brands. Let's not think about brands, let's think about practicality. Let's just go for the most practical car we can find. And then the only thing that appeared in my mind was Skoda. Let's take a look at some Skoda. So I looked at the Skoda, and searching according to our things on SG Carmat, as you do, I came up with a list of stuff at different Skodas, and then this car right here that I'm sitting in caught my eye. A bright blue 2-litre Skoda Superb Ambition. Extremely low mileage, well maintained, good looking car, sharp, clean, really gorgeous, and just nice overall. So I was like, okay, let's arrange a test drive. Maybe it's nice. We sit in the car, test drive it like it's an empty road, give it the beans, and yeah, it's quite peppy from 0 to 2,500, 3,000 RPM. But the moment I floor it and we go to 3,500 RPM and the turbo kicks in, I fell in love with this car. It just booms forward, lurches forward with such aggression and such splendid valor that I just couldn't help but love the acceleration that this car had. And it's not like it didn't have power before 3000 RPM. It had a good amount of pull before 3000 RPM. It's just that when it hit 3500 RPM and when the turbo kicked in, it felt a real like sporty car at that point in time, and it was really exciting and really fun. So then what happened after that was I was like, oh wow, this car is really good. And then the guy who was the car dealer asked me to really test it in some corners, some higher speed corners. And I was just turning and driving, and I was like, oh, this car is stable as hell. It's easy to drive because it's a Skoda, but it's really stable and feels good to take a corner like it was like a sportier model or something. And then it had that power from the acceleration that was very satisfying to feel as well. And then on top of that, because it's a Skoda, it's really spacious, it's really big on the inside for a car of its size, and just it has so much space, so much interesting features, quality of life features that make it such an appealing car. So what I ended up with the Skoda Superb, I realized was a car that was like 80% the fun of the BMW. It had 80% of the comfort of a C-Class because it is a quite well-equipped interior, and it's a very spacious interior. So yes, it lacks in terms of like material quality and finish and details that the Mercedes might have, but it has a lot of space. Considering the Superb is probably based on an Audi A4 or A6, its size is notable, and the back of this car has so much legroom. You know, honestly, I'm jealous of my passengers sometimes because they got so much legroom and so much space. It's got features, it's got space, it has practicality, comfort, and sportiness. And just overall, I was like, whoa, this car is kind of everything that I want. And it also had reasonable depreciation, which is very important. And I was like, okay, so this car has basically everything that I need and some that I want. Is there really any other option? There have been some issues with it, honestly. Some glitches, some small rough around the edges things. Generally, that's what happens when you have a used car, some quirks. But overall, nothing serious. And the used car dealer we bought from was good. He covered everything. So very happy with this car so far. Just absolutely adore it. I think I've had about like 1,000 miles on it now. 1,000 kilometers on it now. Just really absolutely enjoyed every moment of it. Now, there are some interesting things about this car that we found out later on after ending up with this car, like actually buying this car. And that was like the rims. They're like 19 inches rims. They've got Centauro P7 tires, which are super thin. So the comfort of the car, yes, it's spacious, yes, its interior is pretty good, but it's kind of bumpy of a ride, which is nice for like cornering as a driver, but if you're sitting in the back, it's not as desirable, which is a bit of a bummer. On top of that, we discovered, when we went and sent this car for an inspection, the suspension has been swapped from stock suspension to Bilstein B14 coilovers. Who in their right mind installs coilovers in a Skoda Superb? Look, the other day I parked up next to a actual like stock Superb, and the car height difference was like this much, and I was like, what the coilovers, they just like lowered the car and everything, so that's pretty interesting. That's probably why it was so fun to drive, so dynamic, so enjoyable, and so stable throughout the corners. But yeah, I absolutely love this car. It's extremely spacious, which is an awesome deal. Really comfortable to be in, sit in, live in. It's got CarPlay, all the things we need. The only problem I didn't have with it is that it didn't have a reverse camera, but we're gonna fix that really soon. And yeah, Skoda Superb 2-litre Ambition. I'll wait to drive this for a couple more years. And with that, thank you for watching. Goodbye. Subscribe.